Hey guys, Theophilus here. Just a quick video about my first thoughts about the Rings of Power episodes that just came out. I just finished watching them a couple hours ago, and I have to say that I was actually pleasantly surprised at how good I thought they came out and how much I enjoyed them. They weren't perfect, there's still some issues. I'm going to talk about those in a little bit, and in my last video, the problem with the Rings of Power, pretty much all those issues that I talked about, they still stand for me, most all of them. But watching these episodes, I was surprised at how much that I think they actually got right that we didn't get to see from the promotional material. And yeah, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed them, and I'm really optimistic about where the series is going to go. Now, I've heard a lot of people talking about these two episodes being kind of hard to follow because there's a lot of jumping around between characters. They're a little slow, a lot of world building. I really didn't feel that way at all. I thought they were really easy to watch, really easy to follow. I never got bored or confused with who the characters were. I was actually really impressed at how concisely they managed to summarize the First Age and get everybody up to speed, because there's just so much information there. But in just the first couple minutes, they really did a good job laying the groundwork and telling you only what you absolutely needed to know. There is some blurring about just exactly where this falls in the Second Age. They kind of blur the line between First and Second Age when they go into this. And that makes sense. I'm not really begrudging them that with this timeline compression. You kind of have to do that to make the story work. So that's not necessarily a critique. Just be aware that it's going to be a little ambiguous about First Age versus Second Age. Visually, the show looks really good. I like all the scenes, and I talked about this in my last video as well. Lindon, Khazad-dûm, they all look really, really good. It looks like Middle-earth. It really feels like we're back in Middle-earth. Let's talk about the Harfoots for a little bit. Now, I talked a lot about the issues I have with Harfoots, and all those issues still stand. They should be called Hobbits. There's no difference between Harfoots and Hobbits in Tolkien's books. I also talked about the fact that it's dumb that they're nomadic farmers. There's no reason they have to be nomadic farmers. That's an occupation that doesn't make sense. But in spite of those issues, I actually really fell in love with these Harfoots. They felt exactly like hobbits should feel like. And like when you read that first chapter in the Fellowship of the Ring, and you got Hamfast and holding forth in the ivy bush, talking to all his buddies, and they're sharing rumors and being nosy, like superstitions, all that kind of thing. These Harfoots are just like those hobbits. They're really funny. They're goofy. They're nosy. They're parochial. Like they're perfect. In spite of all the, and I was surprised by that. I fell in love with them almost immediately, which really is surprising, since I still think they got them very wrong casting them as nomadic farmers. The dwarves, though, are even better. I have almost nothing bad to say about the dwarves. Almost everything was perfect. A lot of the dwarves have beards so long they're tucked into their belt. Some of the dwarves in The Hobbit have beards tucked into their belts, so it was really cool to see some of the dwarves in this show doing that. They have these war masks that cover their faces, which is also another reference to things that the dwarves had in the books. It was just everything about them. Khazad-dûm was so cool. You have these elevators going up and down in the city. You've got these mirrors that bring in light to light these underground farms, and the mirrors rotate so that the light shines on different crops throughout the day. Just so many cool things like that. The world building in Khazad-dûm and design of the dwarves was just so good and spot on. The one thing that a lot of people will probably be upset about, and I didn't really care about this issue as much, was dwarf women having beards. You remember in the last video I talked about how Lindsay Weber said that they do have facial hair, and it's true. They have facial hair, but what the facial hair is like this little bit of peach fuzz on their cheeks. It looks like a 13-year-old boy who's just starting to get a couple of hairs here and here. It's not beards, and it's dumb that Lindsay Weber tried to equivocate that as if they were beards. I guess technically it's facial hair. It's better than nothing. I think it'd actually be really confusing and hard to watch if all the female dwarves had beards and looked just like the men. So I don't think that's a big problem myself, but some other people might take issue with that. There were a lot of Easter eggs for Tolkien fans that I really appreciated. At one point, we saw an image of Luthien and the dog Huon as well, and that was really cool to see. There's another point in which we see this bust head of Turin Turambar wearing that helmet that has the image of Glaurung on the top of it. It was in a place that was kind of weird to see. Didn't expect to see it where it came up, but it was still cool to see. So there were probably a lot of other Easter eggs I also missed. Now for the negative stuff, which there was some of that. I'm a little nervous about the character of Gil-galad. This is a character who, to me, he should be like the pinnacle of nobility, who is just like everybody is so willing to serve because he's so, outstanding. He has such high character. He's just universally respected. And this Gil-galad is a little bit more like a dirty politician. He's not quite Machiavellian, but he's really clever in the way he treats Galadriel in these first two episodes. Not quite, kind of manipulative in a way. He's trying to get her out of the picture because he views her as a threat, and so he does so in a very brilliant political way. And that's a side of Gil-galad that I just don't really think is something that I want to see for his character. It'd be different if it was coming from a dwarf. It'd be different if it was coming from characters in Numenor. I don't really think we want to see that kind of thing with Gil-galad. So we'll see how things turn out. Maybe he's going to turn out a little bit better in the series. There's another point with Gil-galad that I really didn't like. In this show, at one point, Gil-galad rewards Galadriel and several other people with the right to go back to Valinor, which is completely wrong. So in the Silmarillion, what happens after the elves leave Valinor is they're all banished because they've committed crimes in leaving. They murdered a bunch of their kin. So, and obviously they didn't go into that in the show. The elves that leave Valinor are all banished. And once the Valar come over and defeat Morgoth at the end of the First Age, they lift that ban and say anybody who wants to come back can come back now, or you can come back later. But in this show, they can't leave on their own will. And that's really weird. That's a very significant change. It changes the Valar. Apparently now they're speaking through Gil-galad. Like, who is Gil-galad to have the authority to say who can come and go from Valinor? It almost feels more like Gil-galad is assuming this authority where he shouldn't have it, and I don't like that at all. And it doesn't give me good feeling about where Gil-galad as a character is going. Elrond and Galadriel have a really weird friendship. They're not a couple, but it seems like they're leaving it on the table that they could become a couple, and that's really odd. Not quite as odd as the Galadriel and Gandalf in Peter Jackson's Hobbit. That was really weird. But Elrond is supposed to marry Galadriel's daughter that she has with Celeborn. Celeborn doesn't exist in this show, so they don't have a child, which makes this close relationship just feel really odd. Because Elrond's got to have kids somewhere along the line. He's got to have Arwen, right, for this to even make sense with the Lord of the Rings. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with that. It's weird. Maybe it'll get less weird as the show goes on. The biggest problem that I have with this series is Galadriel herself as a character. We knew that this Galadriel was going to be very different from Peter Jackson's and from Tolkien's version of Galadriel, but when you sit down and watch the show, she's even more different than I thought she was going to be. She's very brash. She is very sort of unstable. She's consumed by this desire for revenge on Sauron for killing her brother Finrod. And this desire for revenge leads her to just a very unhealthy and unstable place. She is reckless with the lives of her soldiers. She doesn't listen to reason. She's filling a role that's really not, it doesn't make sense for Galadriel to fill. She's a lot younger than she is in Lord of the Rings, yeah, but she's still the oldest elf in Middle-earth right now because Círdan's not in Middle-earth. She's still the oldest and most experienced elf who's still present in Middle-earth. She should be in an advisory position where she's a role model to the other characters. And maybe she's the only one who thinks there's still some danger out there. I mean, that's fine. She can still do that and be that kind of person who's saying, hey, we need to go find Sauron, without being this unstable, angry, reckless woman who's nothing like she's described in any of Tolkien's works. I do not like this take on Galadriel. I think this is the most jarring thing that really pulls me out of really Tolkien's works. She's the most fanficky, probably, of all the characters. So altogether, very positive feeling after watching these episodes. There are some problems, and again, if you haven't watched my last video, the problem with the Rings of Power, pretty much everything in that video still applies. All those issues are still here. Anyway, go give that video a watch if you haven't watched it yet. I don't know if I'm going to be doing videos like this after every episode. I am in seminary, and classes started up last week, so probably not going to have time to do a whole lot of in-depth stuff. But at the end of this season, I will be doing a more in-depth video, just analyzing the season as a whole. At this point, it's probably not going to be helpful to do a whole lot of analyzing episode by episode, because they're just pieces of a bigger puzzle. So be looking out for that. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you heard. Hope you're enjoying the show as well, and leave your thoughts below. Let me know what you think about the first 2 episodes.